Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Gilliland, one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. As you can see, I'm at the office still, but this is where I keep my Galaxy's Edge lightsaber that has a blue crystal, which is appropriate for the things that we are going to be discussing this evening. Uh, Joining me on tonight's adventure is both Stephen Tollafield and Thomas Harper. Gentlemen, how you each doing?
Good.
Stephen first?
Good. Hello there. I got my
Nice.
my celebration T-shirt.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. I really enjoyed the episode this week. It was very stressful with poor Leia and the evil Sith device. I'm sure we'll talk about that. It was very upsetting.
This was my favorite episode.
Yeah.
Thomas, how are you?
I'm good. I have a different Ben on my shirt.
Oh, nice.
So. No, I'm good. It's hard to believe and a little sad that we're 4 out of 6 episodes in, and we'll get the 5th in about 48 hours here-ish. It makes me sad, but we've got a lot coming down the pipe. I'm very interested, since this is the first. Well, ignoring rumors of a second season, this is the first contained universe story that we've had as a 6-part sort of mini event. I'm very curious to see how this winds out as compared to something like Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett, where there's maybe a longer arc at play. So.
Well, that Gregor's, I'd like to do it again. So that's a good sign for.
I'll allow it.
Yeah.
Well, I saw too that they're doing a. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I saw that they're gonna do a cinematic release of all 6 episodes in select theaters, and so maybe they'll see if they get enough people to show up for that, even after it being on Disney Plus. Maybe they'll consider it a cinematic.
They had better select a theater near me. Launch an official complaint somewhere.
Right.
Scream into the void.
Yeah. I can't remember which brand it is, but I saw the post about it somewhere.
I hadn't heard that, and it's like, shut up, take my money.
Yeah.
And the other part is McGregor said he wants to do a second season. Mm-hmm. So he had been quiet about that, and then all of a sudden, yes, I would like to do a second season. It's like, because it's different than Mandalorian, and it's beat Mandalorian in numbers now,
which is that's great.
Yeah. So that's hard to do. So good for them. And but it highlights, we have this, we got Andor, we got Bad Batch. I'm not sure what else comes out in 2022. Did I miss anything?
Those are the main tent poles.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. The Tales of the Jedi, which is like a shorter form, is coming out, and I think that might be it. I don't know about if there's any plan for. I know there's a plan for Visions sort of series 2, but I don't think that's this year. That's probably a 23 project.
I'm pretty sure the timeline was 23 on that, which I'm absolutely for. It's bringing back the Japanese inspiration to Star Wars, and I'm absolutely all for that. Yeah. So let's jump into the legal issues in this bad boy. So just out of the gate, we have Kenobi in a beautiful scene with dueling back the tanks, and he's basically climbing out, going like, "Where's Leia?" And you can refuse medical treatment. Not advisable, but he's getting his groove back, because there's no reluctant Jedi. It's find somebody else. It's where's Leia? And he's large and in charge. And Stephen, could you jump in with the right to refuse medical care, and we can talk about is that a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's as long as you're competent to make your own decisions. If you haven't been adjudicated as incompetent or appointed a guardian, you can make your own choices about what medical procedures you want to have. It's a constitutionally protected right. However, there are some procedures that the state can regulate and can kind of prohibit. The Supreme Court has held in the 90s, sort of in the famous assisted suicide cases, of course, that there's no right to assisted suicide. In other words, the state can prohibit that without violating your constitutional rights, since that's not a fundamental right. So that regulation is subject only to rational basis. So the Supreme Court has upheld those sorts of limitations. But otherwise, generally, if you don't like the treatment, you hear of that happening frequently with people who get a very dire diagnosis and decide that the treatment is going to be worse than the consequences, that you're free to do that. Maybe that's something that you would need to consult the complexities of the medical decision and sort of your end of life planning, of course. But of course, Obi-Wan here can certainly say, "I've had enough of the Bacta tank. I'm ready to go," and no one can force him to stay in it.
This is. Oh, go ahead.
He can hop back in later. He's
just like a dunk tank, just sit in the seat and somebody pays a quarter and tosses a ball and dunks him back in. This is now the second time alongside Book of Boba Fett that we've seen. I don't know if Bacta is inducing these horrendous memories or they just exist and it's just a function of being knocked out cold. But there seems to be some connection about being in Bacta and having a horrendous memory. Vader seems to dwell when he's in his Bacta tank, healing and whatnot. And so I don't know if it's a sort of a side effect of this, but certainly you could understand somebody wanting to get out of this circumstance. It's interesting here that this sort of the legal operation of this rule, because he's clearly not healed. He is seriously injured, and by any standard of medical care, he still needs treatment. And in spite of things that exist in our world, like the Hippocratic Oath and the obligation of medical professionals to treat and to heal someone like that, they don't get to make the final say in a situation like Obi-Wan's, at least.
How long he was in there. Like, was he in there 5 minutes or was he in there like 3 hours? And that, I think, is telling for like how much healing's taken place. Is this the issue of I'm good, I can function, and because if we wait for me to get to 100%, the kid could be dead. So we got to take action now. I can't have a spa day.
Mm-hmm. His shoulders still look like a partially grated piece of cheese, so I can't imagine he's fully up to 100%. And Tala certainly didn't seem to think that he was ready to go. But she's not a doctor.
She's not a doctor, but she seems to make a lot of sense. So, like, if she's saying you need more time, that's a good sign. But you got to balance the issue of we got to go save a kid. The galaxy might depend on this. So give me some Tylenol. and off we go, which raises a whole bunch of issues that are kind of spinning out of control here. So let's take the first part of this with the duty to go rescue Princess Leia. I believe every Star Wars movie has a rescue scene. A New Hope, we're going to go save the princess. In Empire Strikes Back, it's Luke going to go save his friends. And Return of the Jedi, it's everyone going to save Han. Arguably, Luke trying to go save Vader. So, like, again, there's rescue mission on top of rescue mission. And Phantom Menace, there's like multiple ones that you could look at for what's happening. So there's a lot of rescuing people. Kenobi started a rescue. The rescue got interrupted, and Leia gets recaptured or captured by others at this point and taken to Nur. Is there a duty to complete the rescue and go get her? And Stephen, do you want to take the first lightsaber swing at this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that unless her capture was the result of his negligence, then that might trigger an obligation to try to mitigate her injuries, if it was caused by that. But the sort of willful malice and pursuit of Darth Vader seems like a kind of an intervening force here. I'm not sure that force, not to take liberties with that term, but yeah, but it seems like even if he was doing his best to try to rescue her, it seems like Darth Vader's intent on getting to them is probably doesn't trigger a duty on Obi-Wan. And it's interesting that you raise kind of how many stories are focused on that concept of rescuing someone from danger. It's something that I haven't really thought about, but there certainly is those sort of ethical or maybe moral, noble reasons to do that, and certainly lots of scholars argue in favor of recognizing a legal duty to rescue. But for the most part, American law does not impose a legal duty to rescue people. It's mostly just a moral obligation.
And you can see that. No, I was just going to say you can see that sort of tension point here, because while we don't see them, think back to or think over to Alderaan and what Bail and Brea are thinking. They don't know the circumstances or what's unfolding. What they do know is that Obi-Wan undertook the mission, made a commitment on maybe a moral and informal level to go do what they were asking, and they're counting on him. He is quite literally their only hope to rescue their daughter. And you'd be forgiven if you thought under those circumstances, well, they should have some legal recourse. They should have some expectation under the law that he follows through. But I think Stephen recognizes a good point that it probably is at the heart of why it's tough to pin that sort of legal responsibility in real life, because there are a myriad of circumstances, not the least of which is Darth Vader strolling onto the scene, that complicate things, that are intervening causes, as Stephen you mentioned, that in his case he didn't abandon it so much as make a calculated move to keep her safe, and he just didn't count on her getting split up with Tala and Reva being on the other end of this tunnel network. So you can understand the fix that Obi-Wan is in, but at the same time, I think it's the system has it right in terms of not pinning him down in the real world, at least with the legal duty.
I agree. And the factors of Kenobi decides to go lead off Vader, like he's not doing high noon in the middle of town or midnight. It's, I'm going to draw Vader out so everyone else can get away. He's making a sacrifice play. And Talia and Leia rightly go like, that's crazy talk. You go save him. I can get to where I can follow the tunnel. Go save him. Like they make a calculated decision as well. And I think that would alleviate Kenobi of any legal duties. On the flip side, as soon as he's conscious, going like, what? Where is she? Oh no, like that. No, we cannot leave her there because there's too much on the line. I don't know if that triggers a legal duty, but he's, I believe, making the right decision.
Yeah. And it might also be worth noting that a lot of jurisdictions, I know California has Good Samaritan laws on the books, so that kind of shield people who start a rescue or who try to effectuate a rescue, and shields them from liability as long as they are not like grossly negligent in trying to save the person. So, and of course, it's sort of, there's exceptions to that, but like you're sort of describing, Josh and Thomas, that he wasn't really grossly negligent. He made he tried to do the best he could in that situation, and it didn't work out. But it doesn't strike me as that kind of situation.
Yeah, as soon as that kid's neck was snapped, it's like all bets are off that point. Like, this just got ugly.
You're on your own, kid.
He is killing people. He's dragging a woman through the dirt face down with the Force. And he wants me. I'm going to be the diversion. Talia, you get Leia to safety. Makes sense. And it's Leia. Leia's the one telling Talia, go save him, because she's 10 going on 30. Like that's who she is, and it's pretty adorable. It's very adorable. Well, let's go gush over how adorable Leia is here, because normally when somebody plays the, I'm a princess card, or don't you know who my parents are, I am not endeared to them. This is an exception. She's doing all the smart things to go, oh, oh, you've done made a really stupid decision in kidnapping me. Do you know who my father is? So normally I wouldn't approve of that because of the Karen factor, but this is the Leia factor, and she's right. So again, it's Miranda Day for the anniversary of the Miranda opinion, and there's this creates a theme here because she's being held. They put little handcuffs on her. She's clearly in an interrogation room with guards being told that she has no rights. This is the stuff that's like out of the 1930s horror movies of people being treated badly, or more in line with Gestapo or KGB captures as well. But there's definitely an American bad cop uh, feel here pre Miranda that's being depicted. And so, first off, Thomas, do you want to hit what's the legal authority to hold her? And that's bearing in mind that Riva had her kidnapped. So the law here is not looking good on a bunch of levels.
Yeah, well, there's no. So whether you're talking within the context of just civilian law enforcement, or if you could craft this or consider this some sort of pseudo armed conflict that's lingering or existing from the Clone Wars, and the Empire considers themselves still in some state of war against the Jedi Order, there's no legal basis under either framework to kidnap a civilian as a means to an end. The police can't go. I mean, they can certainly, if they have probable cause, bring in witnesses, and sort of investigate and talk to folks. If you're talking about a co-conspirator or something like that, someone who is they believe to have committed a crime, then perhaps there's a basis for a lawful arrest there. Um, if you're talking the framework of IHL or armed conflict, and it's someone who is a combatant, a member of an armed force, or connected to an armed force like that, then maybe you have a basis for detainment. But this isn't any of those things. This is quite literally the use of Leia from the get-go, out of the gate in the first episode, as a means to an end to draw Kenobi out and to draw him off of Tatooine, so that Riva and the rest of the Inquisitors, or perhaps Darth Vader, can find him, capture him, and uh, make him into grated cheese and whatever else they have in store for him. So the bottom line is that a good example would be the police can't come if they're after a murderer and like just kidnap his wife and his children, and do nefarious things to them as a means to get that alleged murderer to give himself up and surrender. Likewise, on the battlefield, you can't capture a fighter's or say a soldier's family and do the same exact sort of violence or unlawful detention on a civilian as a means to an end to effectuate your mission in that setting either. So I think Riva knows exactly what she's doing. The interesting thing here, and I'm not an expert, this is sort of a different twist on it, but when she says I'm a princess, it really echoed some of the sentiment that she rolled out to Vader at the beginning of A New Hope. I'm not an expert on British law or law of the crown, but it there is such a thing within English law is like crimes against the sovereign, crimes against the crown, so to speak. And it might make sense that as a member of the royal house of Organa, that there might be something akin to that in the Star Wars universe, that it's maybe an aggravated type crime or a special type crime to go after somebody like that. You know, the in British law, I think it's sort of a class of treason, if you will, or, you know, an incredibly serious crime to go after somebody within the royal family. But in any event, I'm not an expert there, but it just kind of scratched an itch from A New Hope and made me think as well.
Stephen, anything to add?
That was a great observation, and it just struck me too as we were thinking about it that was such kind of a sweet moment that you think of in the context of her previous insecurity about being an Organa in the first couple of episodes. She's like kind of like asserting, "No, I'm actually a princess. You can't do this to me," which is very sweet. And kind of we were talking about Obi-Wan getting his groove back, but I wonder if this is also going to show us that kind of Leia is kind of capturing her confidence as that role.
Yeah, she's getting her groove. I mean, like I said, she's finding herself, which gives this series a nice parallel with both the characters, for both how Kenobi again snaps out of his depression, and for Leia and going, I'm not an ornament to wave, like I actually have agency and I can get things done. And here she's able to throw down and has one of the best lines in all of Star Wars with, "Is this a staring contest?" You know, like, you go, girl. Like, this is, you know, clearly you can tell who her biological parents are.
You talk first. You talk first. Do I?
Yeah,
it's a very similar to like a Poe.
Yeah, that's been on multiple podcasts now because of the. And many others do the mind probe, not in the original. Like, Vader either doesn't do it or can't, and maybe missing limbs is the reason for there's just less of him. And we don't see it until, I don't think in any of the animated series, until Force Awakens. So they might have just thought of it up at that point in time. So having Reva backdate it and trying it on Leia just doesn't work because of her where mom and dad are. So I throw in also Bale's upbringing. It's just
you're not breaking through those. You're not breaking through those midi-chlorians. No, thank you.
Nope.
although Darth Vader was able to read Luke's mind in Return of the Jedi and realize Leia's his sister. So Leia's even stronger than Luke is at 10, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's well, again, it's a different Force user as well. So like that's Vader reading minds might be different than Reva reading minds. So there could be some different factor as well. So
overconfidence is her weakness.
Yeah, well, definitely. Which brings up the interrogation of a child. So we both have the mind reading, which does not exist in the real world. So tough to crack that one. But we do have laws about a kid being in custody and trying to talk to them, because kids get Miranda rights too. A lot of states have rules for, codified for what happens when a child's arrested for a crime. Most involve telling parents in some way, shape, or form. California hasn't enacted anything on the books specifically yet. There is judge-made law on the topic, and there was a denial of a petition to the California Supreme Court, meaning that there's a little summary of what the law is, but the ultimate issue didn't get resolved by the court. So the Court of Appeals decision stood. But this was, facts are wild. 10-year-old shot and killed his sleeping father. Police come over. Child is in the living room, given Miranda rights. Stepmother's there, so not biological mother, and she doesn't say anything. And the police go out of their way to question the kid in a way that is not scary. And the video shows that they were trying to be as careful as possible with a 10-year-old. And when they got to the question of, do you understand the right to remain silent? The child's reaction was, yes, it's the right to be calm, because the kid had ADHD. And the officer continued, well, it means that you don't have to say anything. So right out, that's a red flag that maybe the kid didn't fully understand what was being gone over with him. Well, the court doesn't review the case. And it's not exactly clear what happened from the Court of Appeals, but as we know that the state can't appeal, that there had to be something that caused the defendant to appeal the case up. The rules that we have, at least in California, for a Miranda waiver, it must be made voluntarily, knowingly, and intelligently. The waiver must be made with a full awareness of both the nature of the right being abandoned, the consequences of the decision to abandon it. And if a juvenile is at issue, you have to look at the juvenile's age, experience, education, background, and intelligence, and whether they have the capacity to understand the warnings given to them, the nature of their Fifth Amendment rights, and the consequences of waiving those rights. So in the case where we got this, that's in the blog post I wrote about this, fully understood what was going on. And that's only from, again, I didn't watch the video. I haven't read the lower court opinion, but instantly it gives red flags. And there were multiple justices who thought that they should have heard the case, including Quaylar, who was a Star Wars fan who's done Comic-Con with us. So, yay team. And, but when you look at Leia, she inherently understands her rights. She's unwilling to talk. Now, and she can't say, like, I'm not talking to you, I want my lawyer, which in our world would end the questioning and a lawyer would have to be brought in. In this story, that involves being put into a torture chamber for being unwilling to talk, which is not okay at all. We don't torture children here. No.
Or anyone for that matter.
Yeah,
it shouldn't. Anyway.
There's no distinction.
Yeah, no. Oh, you're 18 now. You can be waterboarded. Oh,
yeah. Don't worry. Once you blow those candles out, you're done.
Oh, that's horrifying. With that, Stephen, do you want to tag in with any other thoughts on the interrogation? Why it's custodial?
Yeah. I mean, that's the that's the triggering point of, or attachment point of Miranda rights, when you're in custody and you're being interrogated, custodial interrogation. And we talked a little bit about that last week, I think, when they were being questioned sort of by the stormtroopers in the back of the truck, and whether that was a custodial interrogation. And then but this is very obviously, as you said, she's in custody. She's not free to leave, and she is being interrogated, so she certainly has Miranda rights. And as we talked about a little bit last week, the Supreme Court in 2011, as you said, like, you have to consider whether a child knowingly waived Miranda rights, because children don't really understand, like, their options, and they're susceptible to influence by authority figures, especially adults. And so it's a lot trickier to get a knowing waiver of Miranda rights. And but here, of course, as you said, Leia is absolutely secure in her understanding of what she needs or doesn't need to do.
They're also susceptible, as you see, that at least the tactic employed here, to techniques that might get you to otherwise, or might get you to self-incriminate yourself when otherwise you would have stayed silent or something like that. So the all of these concerns are heightened because of her age, and Leia is an exceptional young person. But when we talk about these laws and how they're crafted, we're talking about sort of the average 10-year-old, right? Not the exceptional daughter of Anakin and Padme. And for the average child, if they're taken to Nur, like one of the scariest places in the Star Wars universe, you're under the ocean, you're in this scary all black room, and you're being talked to by an inquisitor of all people. That is much more likely to put pressure on you to talk or say things or do things that are legally damaging to yourself than, say, talking on the side of the road when you can just walk away, or as you're ordering your ice cream or something like that. So it's that age, and the law, like it or not, they make distinctions. There are lines in the sand drawn, and certainly at 10 years old, she falls well below that 18-year-old standard. Certainly other states, other jurisdictions will draw the line, multiple lines in the sand. Some states have specialized rules for kids under 13. Kids 10 and under in some places get special protection, again, stemming from the recognition that the younger you are, the more heightened the danger is. And to tie this back to my opening point, you see Reva use sort of this tactic. She's intimidating. She tries sort of the bad cop way, but then she tries, at least maybe half-heartedly, this good cop approach. Like, we're all friends here. We're all on the same side. These people aren't saving you. They're not out to help anyone. Blah blah blah. And it's almost this sort of echo of stuff, a kind of tactic you see often used by law enforcement in the real world, which is sort of this friendly cop. Hey, we're buddies here. We're all just talking. And for an adult, that can be especially persuasive. For a child who is looking at somebody that they deem to be an authority figure, to include a member of the imperial government in this case, it's especially coercive. And so we want to have a framework of legal protections that recognizes that and offers protection.
It highlights why that states across the country require that if a kid's arrested, the parents are informed immediately. And interviews have the parent present. And some states require parental approval of Miranda rights to be waived, which I think is a horrible idea. I'm more of the mindset of like, shut up and let your lawyer do their work. And because we have public defenders for a reason, let them defend you. Don't let the state prosecute you. But we do have Leia understanding Reva and pulling the like, well, I guess we have to call my dad. So that's
just
Daddy's
chef's kiss. She's just
Daddy's
perfect.
very proud. Oh, God bless her. So awesome. All right, so she's getting put into the torture chamber at that point in time. And okay, so once again, to go over the rules on torture, and this is California rule: every person with the intent to cause cruel or extreme pain and suffering for the purpose of revenge, extortion, or persuasion, or for any sadistic purpose, inflicts great bodily injury, as defined upon the person, is guilty of torture. Person doesn't need to suffer actual pain or have proof of it. Well, they put that kid in the torture chamber. They get really close to starting, and Leia is able to actually call to Kenobi using the Force, which I think is a huge thing that not many like Star Wars podcasts that I've listened to have talked about yet, that she used the Force to call to Kenobi for help. Does that raise the duty to rescue? And Thomas, do you want to swing at that one first?
So the act of her being in a heightened sense of danger beyond just being imprisoned on Nur, I don't think that triggers an additional. That doesn't trigger the duty in and of itself. Again, if rolling back, he knew that she was in exceptional danger as they split up on the pathway before she was taken to Nur. That additional knowledge, I don't think triggers the duty necessarily. Adds to the moral weight of the whole situation and the urgency of the situation, but not a legal duty.
I have a mixed feeling on that because of the torture factor. And so it's not just being held, but the fact she's about to be tortured. And I don't know, it's worth exploring if that creates any other reason. If there's a special relationship between them that would justify a rescue, but I think it's something to think about.
I think that you're right. There are situations where there's a special relationship between the injured and the wannabe rescuer. Although I was looking into it a little bit, at least in California, those tend to be situations where it's like a medical provider, like either a therapist or a physician, or situations where there's like an academic relationship where the school has knowledge of someone who's going to be doing something. They might have a duty to warn or duty to rescue. It's less, and sometimes even businesses, like if they have private security guards, if they know there's like a reasonably foreseeable injury that's going to happen, they might have a duty to intervene to protect people who are on the premises. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't. Maybe there. I'm not aware of like the degree of the crime or the danger. Sort of if there's like some threshold where there is sort of a duty that's created. But maybe
you could make the argument along. And Josh, I think this is what you were getting at ultimately, but I think you could make an argument, a cognizable one, about Obi-Wan arguably acting in loco parentis. So in other words, he's stepping into the shoes of Bail and Breha. They've asked him and sort of delegated that authority. Naturally, they would have known that it's not just the act of rescuing, but get her back, and sort of you have our delegated authority as her parents to do so. And I think the interactions with them and sort of what we saw of them as just before they got captured, in the back of that trawler or whatever vehicle that was, it seemed like a father-daughter relationship. So I think you've got some facts there that you could sink your teeth into.
And Breha and Bail even say, like, what about your duty to her, duty to him? So they even use that legally significant term, duty. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, that, and the kid's adorable. So like that also like helps sell it with like, oh darn, like we can't just sit this one out. Gotta go bring her back to her parents. Which then brings us to the House of Horrors that we see in the temple, which is, it's a tomb. And all of those Jedi or Force users were in carbonite. We'd have a different discussion of, could they be revived? Could we get them out? These all look like trophies, but there weren't people missing limbs. Like there were no clear, like, saber wounds through the heart type of thing, or people missing heads and just the parts tossed into the amber. But definitely looks of terror as they were done away with. So I think there's some good questions there on, do we go back? Is there another rescue mission here? Or are we trying to ensure that a burial takes place? But this raises the desecration of a corpse issue. And I ironically have read a lot about dead bodies because of this blog and podcast. I'm comfortable being known for, any discovery guy. It's a little weird with like, I know a lot about dead bodies.
It comes up a lot in genre fiction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, especially when it's like, you move them from one state to another. And that happened in Sleepy Hollow, where they put a spin on George Washington's body was moved from Virginia, which was stated in his will that it's going to be in Virginia, which is why he's not on the tomb in the U.S. Capitol, but then secretly buried in this Masonic vault chamber in upstate New York, which would directly conflict with his will, unless there was a codicil. That was my theory with that. But again, that involves a whole bunch of, you can't just take a dead body from one state to another. And when it comes to desecration of a corpse, first, the law is very clear that a corpse isn't a person, it's not property, and that there's a duty to bury the corpse. And that connects to family members, and it's immediate family members. So merely saying, so like if I was gunned down brutally, I know you would both be very sad. But you don't have a desecration of a corpse argument that you could bring a case if my remains were then mishandled, because we're just buddies. Now, if you saw it happen with them, like drop me, then there could be. So
I can't imagine such mental anguish.
I know
upon
it's
myself.
okay. It's okay if you need to go hug your wife and cry for a bit. It's okay. It's just go get a comfort puppy. I understand. I'm lovable, but there are limits with this. So when you find that trophy room, if that's what it is, or if it's the emperor wanting to be able to do cloning experiments, like what are they? Why didn't? It's not like the bodies were burned. They kept them around in possibly a useful way so they're preserved. It's just different than what we've seen in Mandalorian and any other part of Star Wars. So for a desecration of a corpse, I think you actually need the family members to bring a claim. Now, for the Jedi who are killed, I don't know if that's enough for Kenobi to be able to bring a desecration of a corpse claim, because they're all in the Jedi Order together, and he's one of the last ones right now, and they're just getting slaughtered left and right. So I think that would be a much harder argument to make. Did either of you have thoughts you want to add to this?
It felt very Jurassic Park like. You mentioned the word
Mm-hmm.
amber, and it felt like they were the mosquito trapped in John Hammond's cane. um, I I don't know if in the last 2 episodes we're gonna get anything on that, but it definitely I really don't think that they're like display items. Like the Empire and Vader are not displaying these Jedi like I have the toys behind me, right? I think there's something more to it, and that opens up a whole can if they're experimenting on these Jedi and attempting to unlock secrets using their body. I think there you absolutely get into desecration territory. There's also a religious aspect to it. I mean, many religions in our world have very, very specific burial requirements related to how the body is handled, the timing from death to burial, all of which are really central tenets in certain religions. And when those tenets are violated, what may seem like sort of a whatever to the average person that's not in that religion can be a really, really big deal for those folks, and something that's incredibly damaging on a spiritual level. We've seen a couple ways in which Jedi. I don't know that there's one way that Jedi are necessarily buried, other than maybe burned on a pyre. That seems to be the predominant way, or just you disappear into a bunch of like a pile of clothes. But I would certainly, it would not surprise me if the Jedi have sort of a tenet of their religion, so to speak, that's built around how they're treated after death. I also think for somebody like Reva or the other Jedi, former Jedi that are there, it has to be really damaging mentally to have to walk back and forth. This seems to be a corridor that's used. It's not just an out of the way place. And to have to walk by your former colleagues or a youngling or a Padawan that's suspended and displayed in that state has to be really mentally damaging as well.
The experiment issue is a big one because you can't just go dig up a corpse and do experiments on it. That was very 18th and 19th century body stealing cases, which is a kissing cousin of desecration of a corpse, because medical schools needed cadavers. And so that wasn't legal for a long time. So there was a black market of bodies getting dug up and then sold, and nefarious things happening in order for science to advance, so doctors could understand how to how to do surgery, figure out how the human body works. And it was not pretty. So Mary Shelley's Frankenstein touches on this. There's lots of examples of that from genre, of why that's a big deal for stealing a body. And if you're going to do experiments on it, there's did the deceased say you could? It's like an organ donor card, because that can include being used by a medical school, and which is, again, important for science to advance, so we can understand this is how the digestive system works.
I'm going to wager a guess that none of those Jedi consented to being suspended in whatever that goo was and messed around with the Empire.
Yeah. I mean, can they be revived? I think that's a huge question. Or are they dead? And were they stunned and then placed in the goo, and thus this is now a form of false imprisonment that we are contending with? Or are they trophies and deceased? Yeah. But a bunch of them had eyes open. The youngling had his eyes open and looked surprised. That's not
creepy.
Yeah, it is messed up beyond anything. And is this some grand scheme by Palpatine for experiments? Yeah. I don't know, but I do think if it turns into a rescue mission for all of those guys, that would be kind of fun. But or are they dead? That's worth discussing.
Yeah, it's not clear what happens to the Fortress Inquisitorius quite yet, because we see it in a couple of in Fallen Order, and here now. Wonder if there'll be some sort of attack on it.
Yeah, definitely. So again, a lot to think about there. Those were the big issues that jumped out to me this episode.
No, I wanted to touch at least briefly on Tala and getting into to Nur and Fortress, onto Nur and into Fortress Inquisitorius. We've talked in the past in some different, I think back to the episode in Mandalorian when they go to Morak and they're Mando's pretending to be an Imperial soldier. That sort of ruse is used all the time, and I love it in Star Wars. There's if we get an Imperial disguise used in every show out there, I'll be a happy fan. But Tala is an interesting case because she is a commissioned Imperial officer. She's not assigned to the fortress here, and she doesn't she has a clearance level that arguably allows her access to an area like the one that she gets into, but she doesn't have strict access to that place. And so within the world of classification, just because you have a top secret clearance, say, doesn't mean you get access to all top secret information out there, right? There's such a thing as compartmentalization of classified information. And if you're not read in, or you don't have your sort of specialized access to a particular bit of information, it doesn't matter that you have that level of clearance. It's done very intentionally like that, so that um, damaging secrets or secrets that could be damaging if they got out aren't if you have a leak in one place, it can be contained, right? It's quite literally compartmentalized. And so she uses like probably the most amazing way to get through the security, just the threat that she's a superior officer, and she'll tell on him to the Grand Inquisitor, and that seems to be enough. He just waves her through. So the mere fact that she has that clearance level, I forget what her exact quote is, that's not enough to get her through. And it's actually a violation of federal law and the UCMJ in the case of a military officer to gain access to a classified area, not just even classified information, but in the real world, we would have something like a secret compartment or a SCIF, a classified information facility, sort of a contained room. You can't bring your cell phone in or other electronics, and that's where you view and kind of deal in classified information. So it's clear she's entering sort of a SCIF type facility. She didn't have access to that. That's a crime in and of itself, getting in there. And then she uses one of her code cylinders to access the classified system there. That's the access of that classified information and the misuse of it are violations on top of what she did in just accessing the facility. And I think we've seen in the last 5-6 years some pretty notable cases of federal employees or contractors being prosecuted for classified leaks. It's taken really seriously, no matter what your purpose is for the breach, and it's not a legal defense to say, "Hey, I was trying to do a good deed," or "I was trying to rescue this person," or whatever. It might be a extenuating, mitigating factor that you can trot out and maybe try to get some sympathy from jurors or whatever, but it doesn't operate as a legal defense. But so anyways, but that was a great, I really appreciated the moment where she's confronted by an officer who's familiar with those who have access to the area and says, like, "You're not assigned to this area." And then she immediately beats him up.
Yeah, she's the MVP this episode.
Like, such a great character, isn't she? She's so clever, and she thinks on her feet and always has a good like response, but she's also just an assassin. She's a ninja. I love her. She's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I want her to survive, and I want to see her in Andor or season 2 of Kenobi.
Mm-hmm.
I would also like them to live happily ever after in the little hut on Tatooine. Like, I'm fine with that too, but I don't think we're going to get that. But I would like to, a wonderful character who is great with Kenobi, and their relationship is fantastic. So,
wouldn't it be great if she could have an on-screen reunion with Pedro Pascal, and they could have their Game of Thrones, hilarious sand, and so great.
Because the Din Djarin would be around 18 or 19.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, at this time, so it'd be a different actor, but
you
by
could
the
DH
time
him.
A lot. Best get another actor. But by the time of Din Djarin's time, where we are post Return of the Jedi, she would still be active, barring what would happen in the Galactic Civil War, and just give some gray in the hair, and she's good to go. And so again, there are a couple ways forward. The other point with this, just the lightsaber action in this is some of my favorite.
Yeah.
Rescuing Leia from the torture chamber, and with the lights going out, it's like, oh, you're toast.
Like very Attack of the Clones reminiscent of the,
It's like, lights go out, one of them goes down in a brilliant fashion, and the other guy like causing threats. There's no way out. The doors are locked. It's like, you're dead, dude. Just
for you, there's no way out.
You should put the blaster down, put your hands on your head, and just hope he lets you live.
It harkened back, if you've played Fallen Order, and if you haven't, you really should pick it up. But throughout the game, you'll encounter stormtroopers and other Imperial troops. And just the average stormtroopers have hilarious dialogue at some point because they get really they either get really excited that they're finally seeing a Jedi, or they get really scared because you're sort of this mystical creature to them. And there was a little bit of that where he's like trying to play off his fear. He's like shaking his his weapon everywhere and sort of knows what's coming. But yeah, it made me harken back to the video game.
Well, and then the reunion, like, okay, they don't hug, but she's like, they told me you were dead. It's like, well, they were lying. But the hallway fight that we get, and I don't know if that's just going to be a recurring motif, but he's dealing with threats from both directions, and doing great lightsaber spins, telling Leia to hide in an open hallway. It's like, okay, duck and cover. Like, how do I do this? But the fact that he holds the water back as the glass is shattering, and then directs it as they breach the door, and Talia's screaming "run," and getting through and the doors closing with the corpses floating. You can see fish. That's attention to detail. That's brilliant filmmaking, and just so much fun.
That's also isn't that how Cal kind of gets away from that? Spoiler alert, I guess, for Fallen Order, but that's how he kind of gets away from Darth Vader at the end.
Yeah.
He blows open a hallway and kind of drowns Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It is so. The fight on the hangar. Also, I mean, again, I'm having a loving memory of seeing Empire Strikes Back in the theater, getting to see the T-47s in action, and see that they have a hover mode. So they're
the speeders, the return of the speeders, so great. I know Thomas has the Y-wings, but I think the speeders are kind of my sentimental favorites. I love seeing those again. That's so great.
Yeah. Oh, they're great.
I had
lots of love.
I had one of those for Christmas 1980, and just the way they would light up, and it was just so much fun. And
in the back.
it's like, God bless them for doing that.
Super fun.
I mean, sure, it has a rough landing because again, they're used to hauling sewage with it, so it's not, she's not used to combat ops. But the look on the pilot's face with Reva coming up, so good. That looking at, is that just made for atmospheric flight? I think that's an interesting question because it doesn't look like it's designed for space flight. Yeah. So that could be a factor with those craft. The end, it's not like there's a party, they lost a guy and they're sad and quiet, and Leia just taking Ben's hand. Perfect.
So good. And for next time, we'll have a little tortious interference with chattels issue, assuming Lola is a chattel. But
yeah,
I hope they check. Like, you.
Yeah. Because I don't remember her lighting up like that weirdly and menacingly,
making that evil little sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why?
The software update.
Why is it red now?
Yeah.
So
Lola.
I pre-ordered one. I'm not gonna lie. So
rough run.
I mean, that Hasbro panel was really good, and when they announced it for pre-orders, like, that should be on my bookshelf.
Fine.
I'm not married. I don't have kids. I can get this.
You think kids stop anything?
I'm sure you think about it.
No comment. I don't have to self-incriminate past this point.
It has to be high up. Anything you guys want to add from this?
No, I think other than everything that Obi-Wan did was a trespasser property. He wasn't entitled to be there, but that's pretty obvious. But Yeah, it was a fun episode, and really exciting to have that sort of jailbreak type plot. Was really fun. And, I'm really looking forward to the resolution.
I mean, I think this is in Solo. Did we see Imperials with trench coats?
I feel like maybe
some of the officers, some of the officers maybe. Nobody hiding under them though.
Yeah.
So great. Which I know there's discourse capital D about that today, but I it just reminded me of BB-8 putting a trash can on his head and passing as a droid.
I loved it.
Yeah, it's really funny.
It's just like so hapless.
Yeah.
It goes back to Shawshank Redemption. That like, how often do you look at a guy's shoes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, stay close because you're tiny, and they're all busy because everyone's freaked out. So just walk with purpose and don't make eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I didn't have a problem with it. It's like, no, that's what they got to do, because those helmets, they have poor vision. They're going to be consumed with what's going on. So let's make a break for it. And I enjoyed seeing Purge Troopers. I admit I had to go look that up.
Oh, right, yeah.
It looks like a special version of them. We didn't get a close look, but yeah, pretty menacing.
Yeah, because I was like, is it a Death Trooper? Like, what are these guys?
They're not fun to fight in the Fallen Order game. I'll tell you that.
There's a couple bosses that are Purge Troopers, right? Oh, maybe Sheik or something is one that kind of screwed me up a couple times.
Good, clean fun. This has been an exceptional series. It's made for weird weeks because I'm not used to having Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel all the time.
Yeah.
And so For All Mankind's restarted, which if you haven't seen that, check it out. Its latest episode begins in the alternate 1992. And there's hotel space stations in orbit. You have Reagan's presidency was elected in 1976 and 1980. President from that followed Reagan was Gary Hart with Vice President Gore, and Gore loses the Democratic nomination to Governor Clinton, and it's setting it up for it's Clinton versus one of the astronauts who's the main character. So they're setting up for the first female president, since this is a world where
I'm just surprised you're keeping all of this straight, that you don't cross the streams regularly and start coming in here talking about Gary Oldman's presidency and wait, no, Star Wars.
Yeah, it's weird to do a different podcast from different shows, but it's like, oh my, this is a really busy time with getting a whole bunch of content at once, because it's
a fire hose for sure.
Yeah, it's I didn't get far into The Boys because I thought the first episode was just too gross in the first 15 minutes, and just turned it off and haven't gone back. But there's a ton of good content out there right now. And if you had told me this in 1986, I don't know if I would have believed you.
Too good to be true.
Yeah, it's a golden age. Everybody's welcome here. So
yeah.
So with that, we will be back. And the other thing, Talia says God.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and especially with the subtitles on when she's, playing Clear and Present Danger, she says God. The only other time we've had anyone say that live action was in Last Jedi. So that was a surprise. So again, another little, So, what their view on religion is, I don't know, but that was a big one. So,
interesting.
Anyway, gentlemen, good night. We will see you all soon, and everyone, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay geeky. Be well.